for you here. Um, Megan, how do you want me to refer to you last name wise? Do you want to go by Sweeney or Schafer or?
Well, Schaefer,
Yeah,
but
you're
formerly
Megan.
known as Sweeney. It
The
doesn't
artist
matter.
formerly known as Sweeney. Um, Sorry, my microphone's like right here, and I think it keeps rubbing on my zipper. I'm trying to like hold it up so it doesn't
No worries.
crack your ears. Um, hey, so Megan, tell me a little bit about how you got started in luge. Like, was this? Were you and Emily at that same moment? Like, you both saw the flyer in the newspaper, or had you already started luge?
I had already started. So I had started when I was 12, sorry. And it was a slider search. And it was in Lake Placid because my family at the time was living in South Carolina. And we would every summer go up to visit my dad's family in Saranac Lake. They had this free event. I went with my brother and my cousin, and we tried out. And I think, and Emily laughs because at that point, it's like they hook, line, and sinker you in, like, and it's not us, it's the parents. Your child can be an Olympian, you know. We're just there like, send us down the mountain, let's go. But so I had already started, and I was sliding for about 2 years. And then Emily, that's when I got put on the team. And I think Emily kind of saw that, like, I didn't have to go to school during this time, even though I was still doing school. They had study hall and everything, you know. And she just like was kind of fixated on like the sport itself. Like, she's always been a daredevil. She's the youngest of three. Like, let's be honest. You can do it, I can do it. So
I love that. That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about your background as it relates to living in Maine, because I know that Emily said that she moved from Maine when she was about 10 or 12, I think 12. So tell me a little bit about your guys' like history of living in Maine so I get it straight.
yeah, so all three of us were born in Maine. We have a brother in between us. We are all born in Maine. My parents we bought like basically our first big family home, the farmstead in Wyndham. And my brother and I lived there until I was 6 and he was 4. Emily had like just been born. And then my mom worked for Unum, and was transferred down to a company that they acquired in South Carolina. And we lived there for 6 years, but then moved back to Maine. And we moved, and she was still within Unum, but it was when the Unum Provident merger happened. So she was helping with that merger. We moved back to Falmouth, and I mean, I call it like my growing up years, right? Like between 7th grade and I was a sophomore in high school that I was there. So a huge part of like my entire life was spent in Maine or like returning to Maine, right? So, and my mom and I not joke about it, but it's literally like we cross in, you know, it's across the border from New Hampshire into Kittery, and it's like home, you know, you just kind of, it just has that feeling about it. And I actually had the opportunity to bring my husband to Portland for the first time. Like, as adults, we got to explore Portland, and I just kind of fell in love with it all over again in a different way. And yeah, so it's always in my heart. Like, that's just kind of been a through line of my life.
That's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool. Do you think Emily has those same memories? I know that she is like, so let me just put this in perspective. When
Yeah.
I have had the chance to talk to her, it's been on these like USA Luge press conferences. So I
Yeah.
understand that she's like pretty focused on something else that's pretty important right now. So I try to ask her like, oh hey, you know, what do you think about me? You remember like living up here? So she's kind of like, yeah, it was great. You know,
Yeah.
I know she's in the zone. I mean, do you think Emily has those kind of formative memories about living up here?
Yeah, different ones for sure. Like, she definitely was, I mean, she went like through elementary school, and I actually just was listening in the background to the press conference that y'all had on Monday. And I think she says it perfectly. Like, she spent a lot of her younger years with my dad, who stayed home with us, and she was exposed to sport just like in general, like we played soccer. So she was in soccer. My dad was also really heavily involved in the lacrosse program in Falmouth. And so like she was always there. Yeah. With like lacrosse. He started the, girls hockey, high school hockey team. So like when it comes to Emily and her memories in Maine, and I don't want to speak for her, but like, I think that a lot of it has to do with her just like being there with my dad and being in school and stuff like that. And so, and our house that we all say is like our family home is the Falmouth house. Like we talk about it all the time. Like it's like this person.
Like it's an entity.
Yeah, it is. Like that's where we grew up. That's where we got our family puppy and brought him home there. It's just like stuff like that those are the types of memories that I think we all have.
So when you were living in Falmouth, were you still traveling a lot for luge?
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah, that was I think a huge component to our success. And I say our because it's like my success and then Emily's success and everything is we had a community, and specifically the school community that was behind us, whether it was a guidance counselor that helped us, whether it was the teachers that were like willing to work with us. And that's so important because it's like we're gone from October to December. And then 2 days after Christmas, we're back on the road until March. And so that was such a huge component of allowing us to explore this entire career.
For sure. Yeah. She had said at one point in a different interview from, I don't know if you're familiar with how TV works. I won't get into all the nuts and bolts of it, but one of our affiliates did an interview with her, and she said that, because they were asking about how she got started in luge, she said, well, I think luge finds you. And in your guys' case, it really was that, right? I mean, you guys see an article or an ad in a newspaper, and then all of a sudden you're like, all right, let's do this.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because, so back to when I first tried out, like I had tried out in like Placid, and I made, so basically it's like a screening process is what they call it. So you try out in the summer, they see, thousands of kids, they narrow it down to like, I think that winter was like 100 or so kids that they bring to what they call a screening camp, and they take you to the track, put you on ice, run you through like what a day in the life would be, but that's for like a week. And then from that screening camp, they might choose maybe 10 kids that to come in and be on the development team. Well, I wasn't chosen that first year. And we moved between South Carolina to Maine, and we were like in the car on the way to hockey practice, I think. And they had an ad on the radio that was like, come try out luge at the Slider Search in Portland, Maine. And my dad's like, do you want to go? And I was like, sure, why not? So like I went and tried out again, and then I actually made the team the next year. So like it really does find you.
That's creepy how well it finds you. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you got started with it in Portland, and she got started with it in New York.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she actually tried out in Newport, Rhode Island, because that was where they had it. We had to drive from Maine to Newport because they travel around. It's not the same circuit every year. But we were happy to bring her wherever she needed to try out. But it's the succession and the actual launch of my career, I would say, happened after the tryout in Portland for sure.
That's cool. I mean, so at that really, fast forward so many years, right, to 2010 Vancouver, and you guys are competing against each other for a spot on the team. I mean, how cool is that? What was that like for you?
Cool? No, it was cool. I think, and we've talked about it a lot since then, because I was in a very different place where like in 2010, I had kind of mentally made the decision, like, if I make it this year, that's amazing. If I don't, like, that's just going to be my life of my career, and I'm going to retire. And Emily was like just on the like the precipice of like, I can be really good at this, you know? And she realized her potential in that entire race off process. And like, I think that that was the coolest thing to see from like an older sister, younger sister relationship. And I think we pushed each other for sure. But at the end of the day, it's my sister. So I like, I said, whoever makes it. And if you make it, I'm going to support you like to the fullest. And if I make it, like, I hope you'll support me. And she's like, I'll be right there, you know? And so it was really cool. But the reality is we were both vying for a spot on the Olympic team. So like, it wasn't all like
was
roses.
competitive. Yeah. It wasn't rainbows and sunshine. It was competitive.
Yeah, exactly. That's sort of.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
Let's, if you don't mind, let's fast forward now to 2018. Obviously, she's on the team. You know, you guys are there. Did you get to go to South Korea to watch?
Yeah, we went. My husband and I went. I don't remember how we got there.
Well,
I was like working somewhere, but yeah, we went.
I mean, but tell me about what that was like for you guys, because obviously it didn't end the way that anybody, you know, who's a fan of Emily or USA Luge wanted to see things end. What was it like for you guys to be there, you know, firstly, to watch her race and try to qualify for a medal spot in the Olympics?
Yeah.
But two, you know, to see it play out the way that it did.
Yeah, I think I mean, hands down, like, and I might get emotional, I'm sorry. I still haven't seen the video in its full. I was there, but like as soon as I saw Emily start to turn, like I took off. I knew exactly where she was on the track and I needed to be there just when she finally stopped. It was the scariest moment of my life. Like, I also, if you fast or backtrack to 2006, in the Torino games, there was another athlete, Sam Retrosi, that did something very similar. And like, I guess I was there watching those games as well. And like seeing that and then kind of seeing this nightmare pan out again, like just shook me. I was so proud of her to like get up and walk away. And like, I think that she went through a really hard time after the Olympics. And like, she's in this place now where she's like, I have the opportunity to kind of rewrite my story. And that's so powerful. But yeah, that really sucked, hands down. Like there's no other way to describe it.
And that's I mean, hey, that's the truth, right? I mean, I guess to be perfectly honest, I was kind of hoping to hear you say something about, oh, it's so cool to watch my sister race in the Olympics, but this is the unvarnished truth. And I'll be perfectly honest with you from a reporter journalist perspective. I really hesitated a lot on these press conferences to ask her about that.
Yeah.
Because I was an athlete. I broke, ankles, playing lacrosse, and it's one of those things. Oh, can I cut the same way? Am I going to be able to move the same way I used to?
Yeah.
But this is very different. I mean, there's a lot of physics involved that are not as much in your control. You're going 90 miles an hour on a sled unprotected. It's like a motorcycle, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
When you get in a crash, there are factors that are out of your control that affect your psyche, right? 100%. And so, I've heard her talk about this a lot, where she says, look, I've done my rehab. I've trained to be back to this place over the last 4 years to be able to be back on this team. And what she said the other day on Monday was, a reporter had asked about it. She said, look, I've moved past it mentally so that she can compete. You've been through this as a loser. What is it like for somebody to try to move past something like this, where there's only a degree of it that's in your control when you do crash?
Yeah, it's really, really hard. And I think with Emily, and she said it before, like up until that point, she broke, of all three of us kids, she's the only one that like broke her foot and her arm and her finger and you name it. Like, but she's a fly or die is what we call her. Like, and it has been since day one. Right. And she just never had fear. And I think the biggest part of getting back on the sled was like, she had fear. and she'll talk about it. And it's really hard too, because luge is such a sport of feeling and like comfortability, and like that's why they start so young, so that you can really just develop this sense of being on the sled. And like after her crash, she had to relearn a sense of being on her sled, similar to like what you're talking about. Like it's not that you're not the same athlete anymore, right? Like you have to think of how your body is going to react in a different situation, and how your feelings play into your performance. And so I think it's been 4 very long years of her relearning her mental state towards sliding, but also her physical state towards sliding. And I think that she's in a really good place. Like once she gets to Beijing, she'll be in a better place, because she is, of all, even from our family's perspective, like she's been extremely strict with her COVID, protocols, only for herself, because as you mentioned, that's something she can control. And so, I think that we'll get there and we'll see a big Sweeney smile once we do, but
That's what Jeff says she's known for.
yeah,
You know,
it's
I
been a journey.
I think, for me, it's balancing the reporter and journalist aspect of it, which is this did happen. This is part of her story, but also respecting her mentality about it, which is not that I've moved on from it, because it is part of her story, but it is also like, look, I'm here to do Beijing. I'm not here to relive Pyeongchang. So let me ask you this as a sister, to see her go through all of these hurdles and obstacles to make Team USA again and go compete in the Olympics. I mean, how does that feel for you?
I mean, so the only way, and I think that my 24-month-old son does it best, is like every time we see her on the TV, he's just like, yeah, baby. And that's how I feel. Like she did it. Like, she's so strong. I'm so proud. I know the struggles that she's been through, but like Emily doesn't want to just compete in the Olympics. Like she wants to win the Olympics. Like that is her mentality, and that has always been her drive. And like, I just feel so incredibly proud of her, and for like making the sacrifices that she's made and doing all of the work she's had to do. And I just, I'm so excited to watch her finally,
Well, I feel like that should have been my last question, because my next one's kind of a dud.
No, you're fine.
Because you had such a great answer. She is in the U.S. Army World Class Athlete Program. So is she in the Army Reserves? Like she could be called up, or is she active duty? Or how does this work?
So she's in active duty. And you're gonna have to, I'm like not very well versed in this, but it is extremely complicated. But that's because she's active duty, and at the very base of it all, she is a soldier. And when they made the call and did not grant orders to go to Russia, that was like, whoa, it really, you see the reality in the decisions that she's had to make throughout her career. But I truly do think that going into the World Class Athlete Program and being a part of that has given her structure outside of the sport. And like, I all through basic and everything, like I would get like random phone calls, and when she had privileges and stuff. And I just will never forget the moment she told me like she was the leader of their platoon and during basic and stuff. And she was just like, Megan, like, I don't know why people look up to me. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, like she's mentally fit, she's physically fit, she's personable, like, and I just think that, but having that kind of flip of the brain and being like, oh, I can be a leader, like that changed her thought process as to how she approached training and racing. And like, I can do this. I'm not always the little sister and like the follower in this situation. Like she really is a true leader and someone that, is extremely dedicated in both her sport career, but also in her Army career. And so, yeah, I'm really proud of her.
You have all the reason in the world to be. Do you know her rank? Is she like a sergeant or a lieutenant or?
She's a sergeant,
Okay.
and she is military police.
Okay.
And yeah, so she's been doing a lot of like leadership work and stuff like that. So we'll see
That's
how long
cool.
she stays in. Yeah, it's been really cool.
Did you
She's
guys have?
learned.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say over the past couple of years, through political changes and through the world and all this stuff, like she's learned a lot about the policies and the processes associated with being an athlete and a soldier. So it's been really educational.
Did you guys have anybody else in the family that was military, or what drove her to do to enlist?
Yeah, I think two things. So my grandfather was also in the Army and the Navy, and our other grandfather was in the Navy. And then we also have a cousin who is in the Navy. And I think ultimately, when going through the process, like the WCAT program wasn't really an option for me personally. And Emily was like, do you think I should do this? And honestly, I think after talking to her a lot, like I was very adamant that she needed to have something outside of the sport to invest in because you never know what's going to happen. And that was kind of the basis of, I think you should do this. It doesn't have to be long term, but it will give you a lot of benefits in just like setting your future self up for success. So we were really supportive. And then, I'm sure she spoke with my grandfather a lot about it. They were like best friends. And he passed away a couple of years ago, but I think that was something that she's really grown into over the past, oh gosh, I think it's been 9-10 years since she's joined. Yeah, she's been a long time.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Megan, you have been abundantly generous with your time and you've answered all of my questions. Is there anything that I didn't ask you or that we didn't touch on about Emily, your relationship that you think you want to mention or that I didn't touch on that you think is important for people to know about her?
I just think that she is going to give it her all. And I'm so excited to see what that really looks like. And I think the one thing that we're so excited on this side of the camera about like the Olympics and everything, but it's really kind of, I don't want to, it's like unnerving on the other side. Like they name the team, but then there's no communication yet around like, what does the travel look like? What does, processing look like? So there's a lot of these unknowns still that I think that the athletes themselves are dealing with. And so it'll be really cool to see it all play out in such a short period of time.
Yes, yeah.
It's
She was saying
really
that to me. Oh yeah, I mean, she was saying this to me the other day on the Zoom. I asked her about, can you be excited with all the different stresses you've had, between COVID, traveling, the issue with the sleds a couple of months ago, all this stuff. Like, can you be excited? She's like, I don't think I'm going to be excited until I'm like on the ramp, ready to push off. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.